Have you ever noticed that even when you work more, earn a little better, or do everything right, the money just doesn't stick? It feels like it comes in through one door and goes out the other. And at the end of the month, all that's left is frustration, not progress. Most people believe the problem is not earning enough, but the truth is more uncomfortable. The problem is almost always where the money is being spent. Small decisions made every day are silently sabotaging any chance of financial growth. Today, I'm going to show you 10 things that are no longer worth spending your money on. These aren't obvious expenses or extreme luxuries. They're common, socially accepted habits that seem harmless, but over the years, they cost freedom, peace of mind, and time. And no, this isn't theory. After years studying personal finance and observing the behavior of financially successful people, one thing becomes clear. Rich people don't spend money trying to look rich. They spend with intention, with strategy, and with a long-term focus. If you want to stop merely surviving financially and start truly moving forward, this video may change how you see your money starting today. What makes all of this even more dangerous is that most of these expenses don't feel like mistakes in the moment they happen. They're small, frequent, and socially normalized, and that's exactly why they go unnoticed. You work, get paid, pay the bills, and the rest just disappears. Not in one big expense, but in dozens of automatic decisions. A quick purchase here, a payment installment there, a subscription you barely remember exists. When you realize it, the month is over, and so is the money. The problem isn't a lack of intelligence, it's a lack of financial awareness. Most people were never taught to observe their own behavior with money. They simply repeat patterns, spending when they're tired, stressed, or trying to emotionally compensate for something. Consumption becomes a reward, an escape valve, an identity. Meanwhile, financially successful people think differently. They understand that every dollar spent represents a choice, not just between buying or not buying, but between immediate consumption and wealth building. This is where most people get stuck, earning more but always living on the edge, not because their income doesn't increase, but because their expenses rise at the same pace or even faster. Before talking about what to cut, it's essential to understand this. Money doesn't disappear by accident. It goes exactly where you direct it, consciously or unconsciously. After understanding how money leaks through the small details of everyday life, an important question comes up. What do financially successful people do differently? The answer isn't in complex secrets, but in clear priorities. Rich people avoid certain expenses, not because they're cheap or constantly depriving themselves, but because they understand the cost of every decision. For them, spending isn't just trading money for something now, it's giving up what that money could become in the future. This concept is called opportunity cost. Every dollar spent on something that doesn't create value is a dollar that doesn't get invested, multiplied, and transformed into freedom. While many focus on immediate pleasure, rich people think about the compounded impact over the years. In this video, you'll see 10 common expenses that most people consider normal, but those who build wealth consciously avoid, not because they're forbidden, but because they're strategic. As we move forward, you'll notice a pattern. Each of these expenses seems small on its own, but together they form the main obstacle between the financial life you have today and the one you could have in the future. And the first one starts exactly where many people go wrong, trying to look successful instead of actually becoming successful. The first expense that's no longer worth your money is spending done purely to signal status. Designer clothes, expensive accessories, luxury items, and external symbols of success that don't increase your income, protect your future, or build any real wealth. Many people spend this way without realizing it. They're not buying the product, they're buying validation, the feeling of belonging, approval, and looking successful in the eyes of others. The problem is that this kind of spending is never sustainable. There will always be someone with something newer, more expensive, or more exclusive. Financially intelligent people understand a simple truth. Looking rich is expensive. Being rich requires discretion. Those who build wealth direct their money toward assets, education, businesses, and investments, not toward temporary applause. This doesn't mean never spending money on nice things. It means spending with intention. An item only makes sense when it delivers real utility, durability, or a conscious emotional return, not when it exists solely to feed the ego. Before making this kind of purchase, it's worth asking a powerful question. If no one saw this, would I still buy it? If the answer is no, the cost is probably greater than the benefit. And when this pattern repeats itself in other areas of life, especially in bigger, more expensive decisions, the financial impact becomes even more dangerous. After visible status, one of the biggest symbols of financial appearance is the car, and for that exact reason, it becomes one of the most common and most expensive personal finance mistakes. Cars are marketed as achievements, rewards, signs of success, but in practice, they're among the assets that lose value the fastest over time. The moment a car leaves the dealership, it starts depreciating, and when it's paired with long-term financing, high interest rates, insurance, and maintenance, the real cost becomes even heavier. Many people commit a large portion of their monthly income just to maintain a car that doesn't fit their budget. The result is predictable: less money to invest, more stress, and little room for emergencies. Wealthy people see cars differently. To them, a car is a mobility tool, not an identity symbol. They understand that money tied up in something that only loses value is money that stops working in their favor. One simple rule helps a lot here. If the car requires constant sacrifice or prevents you from investing, it's above your financial reality. And when emotional decisions like this stack up with small recurring expenses, the impact quietly spreads through your budget. After visible status, the problem shifts to something else: small expenses that no one notices. Monthly subscriptions are the best example of this. They seem harmless because the cost is low and the payment is automatic. That's exactly why they're dangerous. Streaming services, apps, online tools, gym memberships you no longer use, all of these keep charging month after month even when they provide no real value. Individually, each expense feels insignificant. Together, they create a constant drain on your money. The issue isn't subscribing to services, it's failing to review them. Most people never perform a simple audit of their own budget. They accept these costs as part of life without questioning them. Financially organized people do the opposite. They review recurring expenses regularly and eliminate anything that's not actively being used. To them, money stuck in invisible expenses is pure waste. One simple action solves most of this. If you haven't used a service in the last 30 days, it probably doesn't deserve a place in your budget. And when this kind of neglect combines with impulse-driven decisions, the impact becomes even more noticeable. A large portion of unnecessary spending doesn't come from necessity, but from emotion. Impulse purchases are automatic responses to stress, exhaustion, frustration, or even boredom. Money becomes a quick way to soothe temporary feelings. The problem is that this sense of relief doesn't last. Regret soon follows, and in many cases, financial guilt. Social media and marketing know exactly how to exploit this by creating urgency, scarcity, and the illusion that you need something right now. When consumption becomes emotional, it stops being a conscious choice and turns into a dangerous habit. And repeated habits, even small ones, completely shape your financial life over time. Financially intelligent people aren't immune to the urge to buy, but they create barriers between emotion and action. They understand they don't need to react immediately to every desire. One simple strategy works extremely well. Delay any unplanned purchase for 24 hours. Most of the time, the impulse disappears. Controlling this kind of spending isn't about deprivation, it's about regaining control. And when that control doesn't exist, even tools like credit cards turn into traps that are far more expensive.
A credit card, when misused, becomes one of the biggest enemies of your financial life. The problem isn't the card itself, but the interest built into it. It works against you every single day, silently. Paying only the minimum balance or putting everything on installments creates the illusion that the expense is small and manageable, but in practice, interest compounds aggressively. A simple purchase can end up costing double or even more over time. This type of debt traps people in a cycle that's hard to escape. The more interest you pay, the less money you have left. And the less you have left, the more you rely on credit. It's a game designed to be lost by anyone without a strategy. Financially organized people see credit as a tool, not as an extension of their income. They know exactly how much they can spend and pay their balance in full whenever possible. One simple rule changes everything. If you can't afford to pay for something in cash or in full when the statement closes, you probably can't afford it yet. And when credit is used without control, it often opens the door to another common mistake, falling for promises that seem like easy solutions to complex financial problems. Whenever someone is under financial pressure, the temptation of shortcuts appears. Promises of quick wealth show up as magical solutions to problems that took years to form, and that's exactly where the danger lies. Miracle courses, disguised schemes, trading bots, once-in-a-lifetime opportunities, and guaranteed returns are sold with a seductive narrative: little effort, little time, and a lot of money. In reality, what exists is high risk, lack of transparency, and often losses. Financially intelligent people understand that lasting wealth doesn't come from shortcuts, but from processes. Investing requires time, discipline, and patience. Any promise that ignores this should be treated with suspicion. This doesn't mean opportunities don't exist. It means real opportunities don't need to be pushed with urgency or promise unrealistic results. They still make sense when analyzed calmly. One simple rule helps avoid many mistakes. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And when the search for shortcuts replaces gradual building, even everyday expenses start to be ignored, especially those that seem small but repeat daily. After so many examples of major financial mistakes, there's one type of expense that's even more deceptive, the kind that feels small, routine, and harmless. Eating out and ordering delivery falls squarely into this category. Eating a lunch here, a coffee there, a quick order at night because no one feels like cooking. Individually, these expenses don't seem alarming. The problem is repetition. When they become daily habits, they quietly consume a significant portion of your income. Beyond the cost of the food itself, there's the price of convenience. Fees, tips, and service charges inflate the final amount. By the end of the month, what seemed minor turns into hundreds or thousands of dollars that could have been directed toward investments or bigger goals. Financially organized people don't live by restriction, but by planning. They balance convenience with awareness. Eating out becomes the exception, not the rule. One simple change already makes a difference: setting specific days to eat out and planning basic meals during the week. This kind of adjustment shows that financial discipline doesn't require extreme sacrifices, just attention. And the same logic applies to another very common type of consumption today: technology. Technology evolves fast, and along with it grows the constant feeling that what you have is already outdated. New phones, watches, headphones, and devices appear all the time, creating the idea that upgrading is almost an obligation. The problem is that most of the time, these upgrades don't bring real gains in productivity or quality of life. They're minor improvements that don't justify the cost, but are very well sold through marketing and social pressure. Replacing devices every year has become normal, even when the current one works perfectly. This accelerated consumption creates a cycle of unnecessary spending with little financial return. Financially intelligent people think differently. They buy technology based on utility, not novelty. They use their devices for their full lifespan and only upgrade when there's a clear benefit. One question helps a lot in this process: does this actually improve my life, or just my temporary feeling of something new? When this logic isn't applied, money slowly drains away, and with bigger decisions like housing, the impact of poorly sized choices becomes even heavier.
For many people, a home represents stability, achievement, and security, and precisely because of that, it's common to make emotional decisions in this area. The problem starts when the size or standard of the home goes beyond your real ability to sustain that cost in the long run. The mistake isn't just the mortgage payment or rent. The real burden comes from the invisible costs:
constant maintenance, higher taxes, water and electricity bills, HOA fees, furniture, and even the time spent taking care of everything. A bigger home demands more money and more energy. Many people trap themselves financially for years trying to maintain a lifestyle that doesn't match their income. The result is less flexibility, fewer investments, and more financial anxiety. Financially intelligent people do the opposite. They choose to live below the maximum they could technically afford. This creates a margin of safety, peace of mind, and room to invest in the future. One simple rule helps avoid this mistake. If housing costs consume so much of your budget that you can't save or invest, it's above the ideal level. And when big decisions like this squeeze the budget, the first habit to be postponed is usually the one that makes the biggest difference in the long run: investing. Perfect. Let's continue. Among all the expenses discussed so far, this one is the most silent and perhaps the most expensive of all. Not investing because of lack of time doesn't feel like an immediate cost, but in practice, it's a massive loss of opportunity. Many people say they'll start investing when they earn more, when life is more organized, or when they have more time to learn. The problem is that this moment almost never comes. Meanwhile, the years go by, and with them, the investor's greatest ally, time. The real cost here isn't the money you failed to invest today, but the growth it could have achieved over decades. Compound interest doesn't work with urgency. It rewards consistency and early action. Financially intelligent people understand that investing doesn't need to be complicated or time-consuming. Starting small, automatically and consistently, is already enough to generate meaningful results over the long term. Waiting for the perfect moment is a common trap. Those who build wealth start with what they have, where they are, and adjust along the way. When you look back, you realize that many expenses that once felt urgent left nothing behind. But the money invested, even in small amounts, keeps working. And when you observe all the previous mistakes together, a pattern starts to become clear. After analyzing all these expenses, something important becomes obvious. The problem was never just the money, but the behavior pattern behind the decisions. Each mistake we saw looks different on the surface, but they all come from the same place: spending without intention. Status, expensive cars, forgotten subscriptions, impulses, interest, financial shortcuts, daily spending, excessive technology, housing beyond your means, and postponing investments. All of these habits have one thing in common: they prioritize the present and ignore the future. People who constantly live paycheck to paycheck aren't necessarily spending in extreme luxury. They're simply repeating automatic decisions without evaluating the compounded impact over time. And the effect is devastating: years of work with no real progress. Financially successful people do exactly the opposite. They don't eliminate all pleasure from life, but they eliminate waste. Every expense goes through a simple filter: does this bring me closer or farther from my financial goals? When you start seeing money this way, everything changes. The focus shifts from cutting just to cut to directing money better. It's not about living in fear of spending, but about spending with awareness. And it's this mindset shift that prepares the ground for the most important decision of all: to act now, not later. At this point, you've already realized that financial freedom isn't built through big lucky breaks, but through decisions repeated every day. And the good news is that you don't need to change everything at once to start seeing results. Every expense you cut today creates space for something bigger tomorrow. Every conscious choice strengthens your control over your money. What seems small now becomes powerful over time. The difference between those who always live on the edge and those who build wealth isn't the initial income, but the ability to act before it's too late. Waiting for the perfect scenario feels comfortable, but it's expensive. Progress begins when you decide to do the best you can with what you have right now. If this video helped you see your spending differently, turn that insight into action. Choose one habit to change today, not 10, not 5,
Just one. That's how real change lasts. And if this content resonated with you, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who also needs to hear this. Comment below, which of these expenses are you going to eliminate first? Your engagement helps the channel keep bringing content that truly makes a difference. Now, before we wrap up, there's one final reflection you need to take with you.